Arabs were the first ones that started enslaving black folk, and Arabs have been enslaving black folk now for 1,300 years. Arabs first started enslaving blacks in 765 AD when they marched into Africa in what they call in search of the 3 G's, God, glory, and gold. They pursued Africa until the 12th century when Timbuktu, when they overtook Timbuktu and Timbuktu fell, then they started dominating Africa. But Arabs were the first ones. Portuguese were the second ones. Hispanics were the third ones. Then the Germans and the Danes. Then the French. Then the English. The Norwegians on down the line. Then lastly was the American Indians. Everybody's enslaved black folk. And that's what a race was. A contest started to develop the Western world. The rule was he who gets there first with the most slaves and make the most money will be the most powerful nation on earth. And the race began. Everybody was in the race to use. Everybody's enslaved black folk. And that's what a race was. A contest started to develop the Western world. The rule was he who gets there first with the most slaves and make the most money will be the most powerful nation on earth. And the race began. Everybody was in the race to use black folk except black folk.
And so pull out by pulling away from affirmative action, let it collapse. And the Indians, in the first treaties that were initiated in the New York Treaty in 1507, it put in there that Indians would be compensated if they sided with the European whites and helped maintain slavery. We would give you clothes, food, and some weapons, and you can become civilized. So-called civilized tribes. The civilized tribes were the Indians who said, we will help you maintain slavery in this country. So Indians became slave traders, slave hunters, slave owners, and they signed with the South in the 1860s to fight with the South to maintain slavery in the United States. And the reason the Indians lost all their territory was because they signed a treaty with the South. And in all those previous treaties, the treaty said if you take up arms against the United States, you would lose all your rights. And when the Indians signed that fight with the South, they lost most of their territory. And the United States said, I'll give you some amnesty if you come back and do this for us. One, you free all the slaves that you were still holding, all the black freemen. Free them. Like the Chickasaw and Choctaw Indians in 1866 were still holding 12,000, 15,000 blacks as slaves. But the American troops went into every Indian reservation and made them turn the slaves loose. And said, and when you turn these black slaves loose, these are treaties. You go to your computer and look up the Indian treaties of 1866. And it says this, first of all, you got to give each one $150. You give them 160 acres of land. They got to have access to any resources we send to you. And they have access to any resources on the reservation. They should be tax exempt. They should have free college education. They should be able to go right now in today's terms, you should be able to go to the government and get contracts, just like the Indians do, without competing for it. You should be able to right now to go to the government and say, I want some radio station license, some TV licenses, and casino license. You should have gambling casinos if you wanted to. If you get them enforced that treaty of 1866. That is a political issue, which means black folk got to get very active. You are entitled to billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars you never got because you're sleeping. You should be raising Cain saying, we're going to the newspapers, we're going to the radio station, we're going to demand that those 1866 Indian treaties be enforced. Now, every year, every December, Obama has invited some like 560-some so-called white Indians to the White House to get benefits. They've been getting an average of about $3.5 billion every year. And I said, what else do you want? This past year, they got all these licenses for radio and TV stations. Black folks should be saying we're entitled to those same benefits because in the treaties, it says that the black freemen and the black Indians' descendants must be treated in all manners similar to white Indians, or what we call $5 Indians. Whites got on the Dawes rolls by paying $5 to the Dawes Commission. They put their name on the rolls and said they were Indians. That's why 90% of the whites in the world, in this country now claiming they're Indians, are not Indians. They're whites who are just getting unearned benefits again. And you hear people talking about, well, the Hispanics coming, they're taking their country back. Nobody took the country from them. They got their rear end whipped in the war in 1835. They got that in the land, but the United States government still turned around and paid them. They paid them 3 times what the acreage was worth. That's for Texas, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. They got paid for it. And even though they lost, and the government didn't have to give them anything because they lost the war. And they talk about, well, they call it, well, the Americans, how about the Indians? They get benefits. Indians were not the original people in this country. They're whites who are just getting unearned benefits again. And you hear people talking about, well, the Hispanics come, they're taking their country back. Nobody took the country from them. They got their rear end whipped in the war in 1835. They got that in the land, but the United States government still turned around and paid them. They paid them 3 times what the acreage was worth. That's for Texas, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. They got paid for it. And even though they lost, and the government didn't have to give them anything because they lost the war.